All right, welcome to the 25th edition of Everything EOS. I'm Zack Gall, an ICO data analyst at ICO Alert, the trusted ICO discovery platform. Visit ICOalert.com, the most complete calendar of all active and upcoming ICOs. And I'm here today, remote from Munich, Germany, with the founder and CEO of Cypherglass, Rob Finch.
Thank you all so much for joining us for yet another episode of Everything EOS. If you're listening to us right now on the podcast version and you want to see us on video, we are still doing video today, even though Gall is out in Munich, Germany. Head over to everythingeos.io and you can see the video version of this podcast. We appreciate the feedback and comments that we're getting about the show, so please continue leaving those and get us really motivated, really pumped, really hyped up to see you all enjoying the show. So continue to let us know by liking, subscribing, or following the podcast on YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, or wherever you may be listening.
And to build on what Rob said about the video format, we're posting it on YouTube on two different channels. We have the Everything EOS channel, which just has exclusive Everything EOS content. And we also post it to the ICO Alert main channel, which has other great non-EOS related podcasts as well. So if you want to subscribe to just this podcast, go to the Everything EOS channel. If you want to subscribe to all of the ICO Alert channel or podcast, go to the ICO Alert channel.
And before we get started, I do need to mention that this is not a sponsored podcast. Zack Gall and I are just two excited members of the EOS community, passionate about this open source software. And as a matter of disclosure, we both do hold EOS tokens ourselves. Before we get started as well, please do not take anything that we're saying here, any of our opinions, as legal, professional, tax, financial, or any other kind of advice. It's just our opinion, and you should always do your own research before you make any financial decisions. Let's get to it.
All right. Yeah, on today's episode, we're going to be recapping the events and announcements that came out of the Global Hackathon and the Blockchain Live conference, both out of London. Some recent controversy surrounding one of the very top-ranked block producers and more. All right. So this week, it's kind of crazy. We flip-flopped. You were in Europe last week. I'm in Europe this week.
Yeah. Yeah, all around the world.
But this time I figured out how to get us both on video. I apologize to all of the watchers and listeners who didn't get to see Rob's beautiful face last week. I had to limit it to audio only. But the reason I'm in Munich, Germany, I just want to mention real quick, I'm here because a new company got funded. They're the first EOS VC funded company from FinLab AG. If you guys remember them, they received $100 million from the Block.One $1 billion dApp fund. A company called Instafo/Vaeon. They both just received a 7-figure amount of funding, and they're going to be doing a conference tomorrow, this Friday, probably today if you guys are watching this, and it's going to cover their announcement of what they're doing on EOS. I'll be meeting the team for the first time in person tomorrow. I'm looking forward to asking them plenty of questions about what they're doing. But the thing that stood out to me the most is that the Vaeon's parent company is called Instafo. And Instafo, they've been around since 2014. They're a German company. They have user data of 30 million users already on their platform currently, on their non-blockchain platform. They work with over 1,000 businesses. So when we talk about EOS being used by enterprise-level businesses, this is going to be a great example of one, and I'm looking forward to digging in deeper tomorrow. So let's get to the hackathon, Rob. How was London last week?
It was good. Aside from some food poisoning, some sickness, some other things that happened, it was a really good time. So I missed the hackathon. I came home early, but our community manager Adriana was there and fortunately grabbed me some merch. So I appreciate that. But she was there. Saw the 3 different teams that ended up winning. First place was a company called EOS Shield that sort of lets people know when they're interacting with a smart contract that's safe, they can trust it, versus one that's not safe. Second place was Chestnut, which is actually run by one of the team members from the Freedom Proxy, Ash Oro. Chestnut was basically a way to protect your EOS accounts. You can set limits and do other stuff like that. I forget who the third person was. We'll have to look, come back to it. But ultimately, the hackathon was great. I had a really good presentation and sort of speech about the future of blockchain and why I think the future of blockchain is EOS at SVK Crypto. SVK Crypto has been on this show. They're one of the EOS VC funds associated with that $1 billion dApp fund. So it was awesome to meet the whole team and go to that event. So shout out to the guys. I'm sure they're watching this right now.
That's even more for full circle, Rob. You got to meet and speak in front of the SVK Crypto EOS VC fund, and I get to speak in front of the FinLab.
Exactly. Eventually, I guess we'll meet them all.
Hopefully. I'm really curious to see how they're picking and choosing who they're funding, because there haven't been a lot of announced businesses yet that have been funded. As far as I know, it's been Everipedia, High Fidelity, and now Vaeon/Instafo.
Exactly. And I think what we're seeing now is a lot of these people just getting out on the ground, looking for as many projects as they can find. So right now, in crypto in general, there aren't a ton of projects being built. People are sort of picking which platform. But I think the main, not necessarily issue, but the main thing that the VCs are running into now is just, they need to find more projects so that then they can filter them down and pick the best projects. So if you're out there, you're building a decentralized app, let us know. We have direct contacts to all these EOS VC people and would love to forward along your project. So reach out to us on Twitter. Zach is at Blockchain Zach with a K, and I'm at Finchify. Let us know if you're building something cool on EOS, and maybe you'll get VC funding.
Getting back to the hackathon, so not only did the first place team EOS Shield win $100,000 for building their MVP over the weekend, but is it the top team or the top several teams that get to pitch in front of the EOS VCs?
I think it was the top 5 teams, actually. So it was those 3, and then I think 2 that won sort of consolation prize awards that I think are $3,000 each or so, which is still a good amount of money. You went out, you had fun in London, you got to meet all these people, and you win a couple grand. That's pretty awesome. So I think they all got to pitch.
I like how they stepped it up. I remember when before the very first EOS hackathon, they said that after the grand finale, which is at the end of this year, those winners would get to pitch in front of the EOS VCs. But now it seems like at each hackathon, they're getting an opportunity to pitch in front of them. And I'm sure it helped that a lot of the VC funds were actually at the hackathon to watch the demos, whether they presented themselves or not, they had people on the ground.
Well, and that I think is the coolest part about all of these EOS VCs. Like the SVK guys in particular are so engaged with the community there. There were probably more than 200 people that showed up for that event. Everybody was engaged and excited the whole time. It wasn't like a conference you go to and everybody kind of like trickles in at the end. Everybody was there early, talking, networking. So they really are, SVK Crypto in particular, have like boots on the ground. They're engaging with the community, finding the best projects. So I'm super excited to see what they're going to announce as their first projects that they're funding.
On the judging team, weren't they?
Yeah, Shane from SVK was one of the judges at the hackathon. So he just sent me a photo on Telegram, actually, him sitting next to Dan, and I was like, oh, that's so awesome! Like, what a cool place to be.
So one more thing about the hackathon was there was a total of 468 participants from over 44 countries that participated, and I don't know if anyone keeps the official statistics on this, but all the press releases I saw said that this was the largest hackathon ever. And that's not just blockchain. That's not just comparing it to Ethereum. That's comparing it to any organization that's ever hosted a hackathon.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, I mean, you can quote the press release I read on it, but it was big numbers. Regardless if it was the biggest ever or just freaking huge, it was a really awesome thing. I'm really looking forward to actually being at one in San Francisco.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm looking into being a mentor there. So it should be kind of cool to be, the 2 of the guys, Charles and somebody else from SVK were mentors there, entrepreneurial mentors. So stayed up the whole time for the hackathon and like talked with people about, how to formulate their pitch, how to, change their idea a little bit to appeal to the VCs. So it should be a fun time in San Francisco in November.
I'm like conflicted. I'm debating whether or not I want to participate in the hackathon. Or just go and create great content, meet with all the producers who will be there, all the mentors, get some sit-down video interviews. I'm hung up on it. I don't know what I want to do.
That's awesome. Well, let me know. Maybe you'll come up with something and end up winning a prize.
So you put out a pretty good tweet a couple hours ago recapping what happened at Blockchain Live. You want to go over all of the cool projects that we're presenting there and a little bit about them?
Yeah. Something that I think a lot of people missed. They were expecting some bigger announcement like the wallet, which Dan, showed off the hardware wallet to some people in person at the hackathon and some other people who said they saw it and said it was cool. But beyond that, there were 6 projects that really came out and debuted at Blockchain Live. And I think it's worth going through all of them because a lot of them are things that people may not have heard of yet. The first is Zimbra, which I think we talked about last week. It's zimbra-on-eos.io. You can check it out and sign up for the beta. But it's more than email. I know we talked about email before, but it says ZimbraX, an open source communications platform built on EOS.io, provides a business class collaboration and productivity suite with account provisioning, ownership, and payment tracked via a smart contract on EOS. So pretty interesting. They're taking the most crucial pieces of that sort of business suite and putting them on the blockchain. So, when the right person logs in, there's a lot of security benefits you get from that. But beyond that, we had EVA, which is basically a decentralized Uber. So, directly matching riders and drivers without those fees in the middle. We saw BitJoy, which is this cool gaming platform that allows you to basically interact with other people in the video game community. So if you're watching somebody on Twitch, you can interact with them, send them tokens, do a bunch of different stuff like that. Emanate, which is a music distribution and royalty platform. So a good way for you to distribute your music and make sure that you're getting all the royalties you deserve. Everything's verifiable on the EOS blockchain. Then beyond that, we also saw IDPass, which was a new take on digital identity, which was pretty interesting. If you go to idpass.org, you can read about that. And then last but not least, we had EOS Finex, which is a fully decentralized high-performance exchange built on EOS. They announced way before the mainnet launched, I think a couple months before. And we've now seen them finally come out with a beta version, show people what it's all about. And Brendan Bloomer, the CEO of Block.One, actually came out and tweeted about it, saying him and Dan were impressed with it. So I thought that was cool.
I talked to you right before we went live on recording this. The Eva Coop team, I never heard of them before, surprisingly. They're the decentralized Uber that you just mentioned on EOS New York's Twitter.
Yeah.
One of the employees at that company gave like a 60-second pitch. Well, I'll just play the video. How about that?
Eva is ride sharing on the blockchain. It's very similar to Uber, except because we run on the blockchain, we can offer a much lower fare to the rider and a much larger share to the driver. It works on iOS and Android, very much like Uber. The user can search for their destination, select it, and the fare is presented in their local currency. They pay in credit card directly integrated with Apple Pay or Google Store as an in-app purchase. We issue them tokens. They issue those tokens to the driver at the end of the ride, and at the end of the week, the driver returns those tokens to us, and we exchange it for fiat so they can pay their bills.
Yeah, so what I really liked about this is how they explain the payment. So basically, the end user whoever is hailing the ride with this Uber, they don't even know that they're using a blockchain. They don't know they're on EOS.
Yeah.
They don't need to know what a private key is, a public key. They don't need to know any of that stuff. It's completely abstracted away from them. They just got to worry about, I ordered to get picked up. The Apple Store took my money, my fiat money, and then the driver gets paid in tokens, and then they cash out at the end of the week or whatever he said. It's an interesting staking mechanism because it's almost like time staking. So it's almost like the drivers have to stake their tokens for a certain amount of days until payday whenever they're allowed to cash them out. I'm looking forward to seeing more about their token economics because just from this little 60-second video that EOS New York shared, it got me super, super interested in this project.
That's awesome.
And out of the other ones you mentioned, we actually have talked about IDPass in the past because I'm pretty sure they won. I should know this, but they're definitely one of the top teams, if not the winners of a previous hackathon. And they were the ones that had the biometric wallet creation that we talked about a while ago, where they do like a retina scan.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so I kind of want to dig into them more. They didn't even have a website, I don't think, back the first time we talked about them. But whenever I saw your tweet, obviously it's idpass.org. So whenever I get some more time, I really want to dig into understanding what they're doing a lot more because we've talked about this biometric identity in the mobile wallet so much that I kind of want to see if I could decide for myself if I think everything Dan's been teasing has anything to do with IDPass or if it has to do with an internal Block.One project that they're working on.
That's interesting. Maybe they'll have some kind of an IDPass integration or something to help with that.
That's what I just want to speculate on myself. I mean, I'm going to find out when everyone else finds out, but I'll try to get a spoiler for myself.
Yeah, something interesting. Speaking of the wallet and sort of the Block.One dApps that Brendan came out before the hackathon and saying like, hey, we're not going to announce our dApps during this time in London. We'll have our own event for that. I saw a really interesting video with him. It was an interview with Bloomberg Markets, and I tweeted about that as well. But it's a 2 or 3 minute video, and he talks about the current state of EOS, the future of Block.One, and she asked, when are you going to have your own dApps built on EOS? And he says they hope to have something to share by the end of this year, he said, or maybe early next year. So we could see something by the end of the year, an official Block.One dApp running on EOS. So I'm curious to see what it'll be.
What do you think? I mean, I think everyone has the same opinion. It's either a mobile wallet or Steem 2.0 or both.
Well, I think it's going to be something along Steem 2.0, a social network. So the context in which he said it was, they were talking about Peter Thiel coming on board, or Peter Thiel, their recent investment round with all these strategic partners, saying when we come out at the end of this year or early next year and announce what we've been working on, these strategic partners will make sense. So looking at Peter Thiel in particular, co-founder of PayPal, the book 0 to 1, he talks all about wanting to replace the US dollar with a digital currency, and a lot of it sort of aligns with what's happening on EOS now, but also was the first investor in Facebook. So leave it to him to know so much about Facebook, how they got started, how they were there from the beginning, how they got this network effect, to then come over and build a decentralized version with Block.One. Makes a ton of sense. So maybe we'll even see a new value transfer system with a stable coin or something similar to PayPal. Who knows? But I'm pretty excited.
So we've talked about how it's exciting whenever a person like Peter Thiel wants to get on board with Block.One to see what they're up to and help in whatever ways he can through his connections, his money, whatever else he brings to the table. A lot of experience. But recently some articles came out, and did you see the articles about the former Block.One employees who left?
Yeah.
I thought
it was talking about.
Yeah, it was good news, and it was taken as FUD by some people. The headline made it sound like, oh, all these people are leaving Block.One. I wonder why. Yeah. But it was really because they're limited by working for Block.One, especially on like governance issues, because the chain is a community chain. Block.One can't manage certain things for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, I mean, that's why people so some of the people, one of them was Brock Pierce, the other was Thomas Cox, two people who are now involved pretty big with the EOS Alliance there. So probably needed that legal separation. But also, Brendan mentioned, they asked him this on that Bloomberg interview, and he was like, these 4 people were not crucial. They weren't high up executives. They're just people that went on to sort of do their own thing, but are still supporting the EOS ecosystem. So it's kind of interesting.
That's downplaying it a little bit, I think. But from what I gather is that Thomas Cox and a few other people are working on something called Strong Block. And there's not a whole lot of information about it yet, but I've heard different rumors. One said that it has to do with privacy and security, maybe a side or sister chain to EOS. And then the other thing I read was that they're a collective group of people who are helping more EOS chains launch. Like they're offering like consulting and support for that. So I don't know if they're doing their own chain or helping others with other chains or what, but I think it can only be a good thing. So you mentioned the EOS Alliance, obviously Brock Pierce and Thomas Cox being 2 big names on there. They had a big inaugural EOS Alliance board retreat. I think it was like last week, and they came to some pretty big decisions.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they decided a few things. One, that they weren't going to seek funding from the worker proposal system, should the worker proposal system pass, until all board members have been elected, which is expected to happen by September 2019. So basically what happened with this EOS Alliance board was they're not elected, and I think there's 7 board members, and they were all chosen. They're very popular people in the community, but they weren't voted in. But the way it's going to work is one at a time, each board member over a course of a certain period of time will be voted in. So eventually after 7 elections, all 7 members of the board are going to be elected in through the EOS blockchain. So there will be no complaints.
Interesting.
No complaints on who sits on the board because the community would have chosen them. Whereas at the start, right now, they're basically saying, we're not going to take any funds from EOS. We're privately funded. But they're leaving the door open because this is something that you would expect the worker proposal system to fund should it pass. And I would support that 100%, but I like how they took the proactive move of saying we're not going to seek out funds until everyone's been elected.
It seems like the same situation we're in now with the Constitution, where the current Constitution we have is temporary, was just kind of put in place by the people that launched the chain, essentially, by that anonymous ABP. It's there. It sort of rules over the chain, but sort of doesn't. And once the referendum tool is complete, which should be next month, I believe, an actual referendum, a vote of all the token holders will be held to vote in the real Constitution. So just like they're doing that for the Constitution, sounds like they're doing that for the Alliance, which is pretty cool to see.
So this whole episode, this is going to be a short one because I got a lot to do tonight still, and I got the big conference thing tomorrow. I got to edit. Yeah. I want to edit this and publish it in time. But what would an episode be without a little bit of FUD, huh? You want to talk about the Huobi issue that came up?
Yeah, so Maple Leaf Capital, at Maple Leaf Cap on Twitter, came out and posted something which was allegedly a document from Huobi outlining basically a vote sharing and reward sharing program. So basically a bunch of BPs getting together and colluding to keep a spot in the top 21. So Huobi was essentially taking a cut from a bunch of, at least these is what the documents say, they're taking a cut from several different block producers that were named in that tweet. You can check out Maple Leaf Cap on Twitter and see everybody who's listed. But pretty interesting stuff. They're taking 50% of the rewards from somebody for voting them in. But really the problem beyond collusion, because the collusion between those block producers is horrible and poses a real threat to the network. But beyond that, the fact that Huobi is voting with their customers' tokens without their customers signing off on that, I think is another pretty big issue as well. On Bitfinex, at least you can go in, they're voting on behalf of the token holders because the token holders are going in and voting through their tool. But on Huobi, they're literally just using their cold storage wallets to vote their own block producers in and are then taking cuts from all the people that they're voting in. So it's pretty crazy.
So has that actually been verified? Because I was in the EOS voter proxies Telegram channel when I had a chance today, and a guy whose handles Huobi Denny, he works for Huobi. He was kind of trying to calm everyone down and explain some of the stuff that happened. And he said he called out some of those documents as being forged or fake, and then he kind of gave a little bit of insight on how things really are. And obviously, the truth is somewhere probably in the middle. But
yeah, I mean, I think the truth is on the blockchain, because you can go and look and see all of the cold storage wallets that Huobi has voting for these different BPs and voting them in at different times, and a lot of it lines up with what the document says. Whether or not they were actually sharing the rewards and taking a piece from it remains to be seen. I think somebody needs to do a little bit more of a block explorer analysis, but it's very clear, and I have seen on the chain that they were doing this, voting with customers' tokens, voting in other BPs that were then voting back for them. So a lot of it is true. It's a matter of now, I think, figuring out what of it isn't true.
So what is your opinion on our path forward from this? Because so far I've seen Huobi went from being number 1 to now they're number 2, and they might continue to drop. I don't know. But as far as like a punishment or something like that, like how do you feel that this should be handled?
I mean, I think a lot of this needs to first be in the Constitution. So this is why at Cypherglass we were so strong before the mainnet launched about making sure that Article 15 that allowed block producers to own up to 10% of other block producers, making sure that that didn't make it in the Constitution. Because if that's in there, it effectively gives people like Huobi the ability to own pieces of everybody else legally within that Constitution framework. So I think first and foremost, the new Constitution that comes out, when everybody votes on it, they need to be voting for things that are specifically anti-collusion, like every BP needs to be independent, cannot own percentages of others, cannot vote share with other BPs, things like that. But beyond that, I think a lot of it is just educating the community. So if you have tokens stored in Huobi, they're voting, they're basically taking your voting power and voting for you. And that's something that you may want to avoid, withdraw your tokens from the exchange. But I also think some of this will be worked out in the long run when systems like Rex come out and you can finally lease your EOS token power to developers. There are going to be tons of people who want to then remove their tokens from exchanges so that they can collect that what is effectively interest on their EOS token. So I think over time, voter participation will go up because of Rex. Maybe the URI from Dan, Universal Resource Inheritance, comes out, and that will increase voter participation. But really what we need are just more people doing more research when they vote and less people holding their tokens on centralized exchanges.
One of the other, so this Denny Wu from Huobi was in the EOS proxy channel, and it was interesting. They got called out because in their bp.json file, they don't have any ownership disclosure, and they don't have a code of conduct as part of that. And the reasoning was because a lot of this blockchain stuff and mining and block producing, it's illegal in China. So there's a major legal risk for any of these Chinese block producers to disclose their ownership. So it's a very fine line, because in a DPass system, we want to know who the block producers are. That way we could give them the authority and give them the trust of the community. But they're in a unique situation because disclosing that ownership could mean jail possibly for them.
I mean, if that's what it is, I think the people know that they're participating in a system where people want to know who their block producers are. I think the fact that it's illegal in their jurisdiction is not an excuse for them to continue to be anonymous and not share their ownership structures. If they need to move to another jurisdiction or not run a BP, there are plenty of other BPs that are sitting there in the standby ranks ready to take their place. So I don't think that's really an excuse for them not to come out and share their ownership.
I felt it was an excuse also. A big reason being that just because the people who own these BPs might live in China, like they could operate this whole business international anywhere they want. Just in the same way EOS New York, when they came out and their servers were where, in like South America.
But they've been all over the place. Yeah, I feel like they move them pretty frequently.
And it was because of the uncertainty with regulation in the U.S. They did it to protect themselves, but yet at the same time, they were completely transparent with who owns them, their code of conduct, and everything like that. And I trust EOS New York and what they're doing. I think they're great for the community, and they're getting around a regulational hurdle with the uncertainty in the U.S. So I don't see that as an excuse. But the one positive that came out of that conversation in the EOS voter proxy channel was that Denny Wu from Huobi said about the code of conduct not being in the JSON file, was he basically said that if referendum passes and makes it mandatory, that they will disclose whatever is in the Constitution. So
interesting.
It seems like they're taking advantage of the fact that we have kind of a weak Constitution right now, and it needs to be re-ratified and improved in the future. And all that's going on with the EOS Alliance, worker groups and conference calls, and all I'm hoping in the next couple months we start seeing some referendum tools coming out and people being able to participate on that, and more governance, things like that. So it's exciting times, man. And anyone who doesn't realize what's going on with EOS right now, they're really missing out. Like I think we do a really good job of explaining some of this stuff to the general community who's not as deep into it, but it's only going to get better. Everything, like within the next 1 year timeline, I can't even explain how excited I am with the stuff that you shared about what Brendan said.
Yeah.
By the beginning of 2019, we're going to see some awesome groundbreaking dApps. A lot of these governance issues that have been issues since almost day one are going to be solved or at least improved. Referendum. What are you most looking forward to in the next 1 year timeline?
Yeah, I think probably just more dApps. So like the 6 dApps we saw at Blockchain Live, looking forward to seeing those launch and see them get users and see there just be more adoption. But I'm also excited for things like inter-blockchain communication with sidechains that will take what is already the most scalable blockchain in the world and make it orders of magnitude more scalable. So then we'll be able to see new decentralized apps that maybe people haven't even thought of yet because they didn't have the throughput for it come out, where maybe one dApp will need 100,000 transactions per second and can take advantage of running on a sidechain connected to the EOS mainnet to run their dApp. So I'm just excited for the dApps, to be honest, to see real users using these things over the next year.
Yeah, obviously dApps have everyone excited. It's got me excited. It's actually the panel I'm going to be part of tomorrow for the Blocktoberfest conference here in Munich. It's actually a panel discussion on what are the applications and use cases of blockchain. So I'm looking forward to sharing my thoughts on that. And a big thing, something interesting I read today was actually, you remember what? I'm stumbling over my words here. Pomp, the podcast host. What's his full name? You mentioned this week.
Anthony Pompliano. Yeah, it's called Off the Chain.
Yeah, great podcast. So the day after you recommended it, your brother Mike recommended it also for the podcast that came out after the episode that you liked about the ETFs. And I started following him on Twitter. I probably should have followed him a long time ago, but he posted something interesting today. He said, unpopular opinion, if you're presenting your application as a dApp, you're already doomed to fail. No one cares that you have a decentralized application. They only want to use what you're building if it is better than the centralized version of what they already have. And I agree 100% about that. I think the future of dApps, and once we have our first killer dApp, it's going to be the killer dApp because your grandma will be able to use it and not know what a private key or a blockchain even are. I think we're getting there. We still have a long road ahead, but I think within the next year, maybe 2 years, with the help of Block.One and Dan Larimer's vision and abilities to get these products out, I think we're getting closer to a UI that can match the UI of some of the top centralized authorities in the technology space, like the Facebooks, the Googles, and things like that.
Totally agree.
I'm really looking forward to it. Do you have anything else you want to hit on before I go to bed here?
I think that's pretty much it. We should next week be back in the same place in Pittsburgh, so look out for our traditional video episode then. But until next time.
All right, until next time, I'm Zack Gall.
I'm Rob Finch.
And this is Everything EOS.